if we really think about it, fantasy is like pretty cool. It's like a way of coping with negative emotions. You can kind of imagine how things would have been different, and then you feel good about yourself. And even those people who come into my office filled with regret, when they fantasize, they imagine, right? So there they are thinking, oh my God, my life is terrible. I screwed it all up. And so when they fantasize, they think, oh, imagine how things could have been. I would have had tons of friends. I would have been super successful. I would have found that next tech company, or I would have developed the first crypto coin. Oh man, that would be so awesome. And they feel good about themselves. So then what's the problem with that, right? Why is that a bad thing? Because our mind clearly transforms negative emotion into positive emotion when we fantasize. The reason that's a problem is because most of our energy, most of our learning, and a lot of our motivation actually comes from negative emotion. If you look at what spurs human beings forward, it's usually negative emotion. And even if we look at our brain, what we find is the parts of our brain that experience negative emotion are actually very, very close to and quite connected with the learning centers of the brain. And you'll understand this very easily if you have 10 good experiences at one restaurant, but then the 11th time you get sick when you eat there, you're not going to want to eat at that restaurant again, because our mind learns so much, and so much of our behavior is actually dictated by our negative emotion. And our amygdala, which experiences so much of our negative emotion, is literally right up against our hippocampus in our brain. So the connections are very, very strong between the negative emotional parts of our brain and the learning parts of our brain. And so now we can see why people who are in the fantasy trap are kind of stuck, right? Because instead of using that negativity to spur them forward, instead of using that negativity to actually change their behavior and make a change in their life, when they engage in the fantasy trap, they sort of pull the plug on that negative emotion. It kind of drains away, and then they end up doing nothing to fix their life.